The purpose of this video will be to give an introductory lecture to bonds, specifically relative to the terminology that's associated with this content, as well as to identify the components of the historic five variables that we use and translate that bond terminology into those five variables. So first of all, when we think about bonds, let us think about the fact that bonds are really promissory notes, or really they're just functions of debt. And in those promissory notes, several promises will be made. The first promise that will be made is what will be called par value, and that means the amount of the debt the issuer owes. So just like we've given examples that says you're going to lend a friend X amount of money, in the world of bonds, that loan amount is called the par value. And the traditional denomination of a bond is $1,000. Now the second thing that you need to know about a bond then is because it is a debt not only comes with a payback amount, but there's generally interest involved in it. The interest involved is called the coupon payment. Now, the coupon payment, though, is going to be a function of a stated interest rate. Coupon, aka interest rate. And the way that we're going to calculate what the coupon payment is you're going to take the coupon rate and you're going to multiply it by the par value, and that is going to tell you the amount of interest that you're going to receive. Now, another function is the timing of the coupon payments, which largely will be either annual or, in most cases, semi-annual. So now you have a debt, you're getting some interest on it, but you also need to know then, when do I get paid back? And the maturity date is equal to the date when the par value will be paid. So those of us that grew up watching things like Popeye learned, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. Well, Tuesday would be the maturity date. All right, the next variable that we need to keep in mind then is what is referred to as the yield to maturity. Yield to maturity, also known as the YTM. And what we want to think about this is rates of return for other bonds that are similar. What really this represents to us is that opportunity cost rate. Opportunity cost rate of return. Now, oftentimes what people end up struggling with when it comes to bonds in the beginning is the fact that there are really two different rates involved. The first rate that we had identified, for example, was the coupon rate. But I would like to highlight the fact that this coupon rate here, oops, I don't want to do that this coupon rate here is only used to determine the coupon payment. That's its only function in life. Whereas this rate, the yield to maturity, that's the market rate, that's the similar rate, that's the opportunity cost of capital rate. That's the one that we will eventually plot into the rate field. All right, then the last thing that we need to know is that bonds have prices. And the prices are quoted in 30 seconds via history. We won't worry about that too much, but in addition to that, they're also quoted in percent of par. So you might see something listed, for example, as 99.00, which means a $990 bond. How do we get something like that? Well, it's percent of par. So if it is 99% of $1,000, that equals 990. Lastly then, let me try and put this together on what I like, but I think we're going to have to adapt at some point in life because other people don't seem to like to use it as much, is the timeline. So let's go ahead and look at how this would work if we would have then our standard timeline where we'd have cash flows that come in, cash flows that go out. Here's where we would have then the price of a bond. Here is then where we would have the par value of the bond. Here is then where we would have the yield to maturity of the bond. Here is where we would have the number of periods of the bond. And then starting from here all the way through to the end is where we would have the payments for the bond. And ultimately what that allows us to do is do some translation here, where par then is really just the new way of saying present value. And that the coupon payment is really our payment. And that the maturity is going to help us determine our N per. Put that there and there. Actually, let's move them all over one more column so we get ourselves a little more room here. The yield to maturity is going to be our rate, and our price is going to be our present value. Pardon me, I just realized in typing this that up here, what I meant was par, which is here, should have been future value. So please make sure you read over this content in the chapter, and hopefully this introductory lecture will help you, because next I'm going to move on to a couple examples of how to calculate price.